At exactly 9:47 p.m. on a quiet Tuesday night in Beaumont, Texas, a routine drive home from work turned into something that would shake a police department to its foundation, explode across every social media platform on Earth, and remind the entire country that power does not always wear a badge. The dashcam and body camera footage from that night would rack up 47 million views in less than 10 days. News anchors covered it. Legal analysts dissected it. Law school professors used it in their classrooms. But before any of that happened, before any camera crew showed up, before any lawyer filed a single document, there was just a tired woman on the side of a dark road, two sleeping kids in her back seat, and a phone pressed to her ear. This was not your typical traffic stop video, because the woman in that car was not just any single mother, and the man she was calling was not just any concerned family member. What happened next would prove that no badge, no uniform, and no small-town sense of untouchable authority can protect you when the truth is on camera, and the person you underestimated happens to be connected to one of the most decorated soldiers this country has ever produced. Before we go any further, drop a comment and let me know where you are watching from tonight. And if you have not already subscribed, do it right now, because this story gets significantly more intense and you do not want to miss a single second of it. Now let us talk about Deja Washington. Because to understand why this story matters, you have to understand exactly who she was. Deja Washington was 34 years old, and she was not your average 34-year-old. While most people her age were winding down their evenings watching television, Deja was finishing back-to-back 12-hour shifts as a licensed practical nurse at Baptist hospitals of Southeast Texas. She had been doing that for 6 years of night shifts, double shifts, holiday shifts, of holding strangers' hands through the worst moments of their lives, and then driving home alone in the dark to relieve her mother, who had been watching her two children, ages 6 and 9. She had been raising those kids completely by herself for 4 years since her divorce, and she did it without drama, without complaint, and with the kind of quiet dignity that does not ask for applause. Here is what you need to understand about Deja before this story goes any further. She had 0 traffic violations on her record, not a single one in 17 years of driving. She grew up in a military household. Her father served, her uncle served, and her older brother Marcus had been in the United States Army since Deja was 12 years old, which meant that from the time she was a little girl, she understood 2 things completely. She understood discipline, and she understood the law. She had attended community legal literacy workshops organized by the local NAACP, specifically because she knew that as a black woman driving alone at night in Southeast Texas, knowledge was not optional. Knowledge was armor. She kept a small notebook in her glove compartment with key legal citations written in her own handwriting, not because she was looking for trouble, because she believed that preparation was the only shield that never let you down. And here is the detail that makes everything else make sense. This was not the first time Officer Darnell Tucker had pulled Deja over. 6 months before this night, on the same stretch of highway, Tucker had stopped her for what he described as a taillight issue. Her mechanic checked that car the very next morning and found absolutely nothing wrong. Deja had taken photos. She had written everything down. She had kept all of it in a file folder at home. Because Deja Washington documented everything. She had learned that from her brother, and her brother had learned it from the Army. On Tuesday, October 14th, Deja had finished one of the hardest shifts of her month. She had held the hand of a patient who passed away that afternoon. She had eaten half a granola bar for lunch and had not sat down for more than a few minutes all day. She clocked out at 9:30, walked to her car, and started driving home. She was not speeding. She was not swerving. Her registration was current, her insurance was active, and every light on that car was working perfectly. She was simply a tired woman trying to get home to her children. Then the blue and red lights came on behind her. Deja's heart did not race with panic. It raced with recognition. She had seen those lights before. She knew this road. And when she looked in her rearview mirror and saw Officer Tucker stepping out of that patrol car, something hardened in her chest. Not fear, resolve. Officer Darnell Tucker had been with the Beaumont Police Department for 9 years. He operated on the assumption that people would comply, that people would be scared, and that being scared meant being controllable. vehicle. He had never faced a formal complaint that resulted in real consequences. Not because he had never done anything worth complaining about, but because most people he encountered did not know they could push back, or did not believe it would make a difference if they did. This stop to him was routine. He approached the window with his flashlight already blazing in her face before she had even finished rolling it down. "License and registration," he said, shining the light directly in her eyes. Deja reached slowly for her documents. "Before I hand these over, can you tell me the specific reason for this stop tonight, officer?" Tucker's jaw tightened. "I asked for your license and registration, ma'am. That's the reason." "That is not a reason," Deja said. Her voice was completely steady. No attitude, no aggression, just precise, calm authority. "Under Texas Transportation Code, you are required to have reasonable suspicion of a violation to initiate a traffic stop. I would like to know specifically what violation you observed. You could see it on the body camera, the slight shift of his weight, the way he moved the flashlight. He had been trained for people who argued loudly. He had been trained for people who got emotional. He had not been trained for calm, citation-specific, legally informed pushback from a woman who clearly knew exactly what she was talking about. "Ma'am, you were driving erratically," he said. "That is interesting," Deja replied, "because I have a dashcam that has been recording since I left the hospital parking lot tonight. I would be very surprised if it shows anything resembling erratic driving. Do you still want to proceed with that reason, or would you like to reconsider?" The silence that followed lasted 4 full seconds. 4 seconds of a police officer standing at a car window saying absolutely nothing, because the person inside had just calmly informed him that his stated justification was being recorded, was verifiable, and was almost certainly false. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am. I am not legally required to exit this vehicle during a routine traffic stop unless you are placing me under arrest," Deja said. "Am I under arrest, Officer Tucker?" He had not told her his name yet. She knew it from 6 months ago. When she used it, something flickered in his face on that body cam footage. The casual confidence faltered, just for a moment, but it faltered. "How do you know my name?" "Because you pulled me over on this same road 6 months ago for a taillight my mechanic confirmed was never broken," she said. "I filed a report. I documented that stop, and I've been documenting this one from the moment your lights came on." Instead of stepping back, instead of recalibrating, instead of doing anything professionally defensible, Tucker did what some officers do when their authority is challenged and they do not know how to respond with reason. He escalated. He repeated the exit command louder. He reached for the door handle. He told her she was being detained without stating a legal basis. He used volume as a substitute for law. And that is when Deja Washington said 5 words that changed everything about that night. "I am calling my brother now." Tucker actually laughed. A short, dismissive sound that the body camera microphone picked up with perfect clarity. "Go ahead," he said. "Call whoever you want." She dialed. It rang twice. The voice that answered was quiet, not loud, not aggressive. Quiet in the way that a very deep, very still body of water is quiet. The kind of quiet that has seen things most people cannot imagine and has nothing left to prove to anyone. "Deja, what's wrong?" It was not a question. It was a soldier's immediate assessment. "I'm on 105, Marcus. Officer Tucker again. He's trying to get me out of the car without giving me a lawful reason. I have the dash cam running. Everything is documented." 2 seconds of silence. "Put him on." She held the phone out the window. "My brother would like to speak with you." Tucker stared at the phone the way you stare at something when you are not yet sure whether it is dangerous. Then he took it. What Master Sergeant Marcus Washington said in the next 90 seconds was described by 3 officers who later reviewed the recording as the most controlled, precise, and quietly devastating verbal exchange they had ever heard in the context of a traffic stop. Marcus did not yell. He never raised his voice once. He spoke the way a man speaks when he has spent over 2 decades in environments where losing your composure means people die. Every word was deliberate. Every sentence was a structure. He identified himself by rank, by unit, and by the name of the JAG officer he intended to contact at 6 the following morning if his sister was not safely home within 30 minutes. He referenced, by number, 3 specific Texas statutes that Tucker had potentially violated in the preceding 11 minutes. He stated that he had already texted his sister's GPS coordinates, the Dashcam timestamp, and Tucker's name and badge number to an attorney and a journalist who covered law enforcement accountability in Southeast Texas. And then he said this. He said, "I have been in situations on 4 different continents where the wrong decision in the next 30 seconds cost somebody everything. I need you to think very carefully about what you are about to do, because I will be there in 4 hours. And I need you to ask yourself whether what you are doing right now is worth what comes after it." Tucker handed the phone back through the window without saying a single word. He stood there for a moment, then he walked back to his cruiser. He sat inside it for 2 minutes and 40 seconds. The body camera was running the entire time, and when he came back to the window, his entire demeanor had changed so completely that it was almost difficult to believe it was the same man. He returned her license and registration. He said she was free to go. He did not explain why he had stopped her. He did not apologize. He handed back her documents with hands that, if you looked closely at the footage, were not entirely steady. Deja Washington drove home. She hugged her kids, who were still asleep, and then sat at her kitchen table until 2 in the morning, writing down every detail of what had happened. Every timestamp, every quote she could recall, every legal citation Tucker had violated. What she produced was an 11-page formal complaint, single-spaced, with footnotes. She submitted it to Internal Affairs the following morning. She emailed a copy to the Jefferson County District Attorney. She sent a copy to the local NAACP chapter. And on the advice of Marcus, who called her at 7 a.m., she sent a copy to the journalist his brother had mentioned the night before. Do you think the police department did enough with what happened next? Let me know in the comments right now. The Internal Affairs Division received her complaint on a Wednesday morning. By Friday afternoon, Tucker had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. This was not normal. These processes typically take weeks just to reach that stage. But the complaint was so meticulously documented and so precise in its legal citations that the supervising lieutenant who read it called in the department's legal counsel and then called the chief. The investigator assigned to the case pulled Tucker's body camera footage and Deja's Dashcam recording. She watched the footage once, then she watched it again. Then she brought in the department's use of force coordinator to watch it with her. What they saw confirmed everything in the complaint point by point. Tucker had failed to provide a specific, articulable reason for the stop. He had issued a coercive demand to exit the vehicle without legal basis. He had provided a false justification that the dashcam footage directly contradicted. And he had made physical contact with the vehicle door handle in a manner described as an attempt at coercion. But then the investigator found something else. Something that made this case far more serious than anyone had initially anticipated. When she reviewed the footage from the stop 6 months earlier, the one Tucker had claimed was for a broken taillight, she discovered that Tucker had run Deja's license plates before turning on his lights. He had run them unprompted, with no observed violation, on a stretch of road where he had no posted assignment that night. And in the 3 months between that first stop and the October stop, department records showed that Tucker had run Deja's plates 2 additional times from his patrol car while on duty, without pulling her over, without any incident report, just running her plates, watching. That discovery transformed the entire investigation. This was no longer a single bad stop. This was a documented pattern of surveillance and targeted harassment of a private citizen who had done absolutely nothing wrong. The investigation concluded in 22 days. That is extraordinarily fast, but the evidence was airtight. It was on camera. It was in the database records, and Deja's complaint had laid it out with a precision that left almost nothing to question. The findings were clear. Tucker had violated department policy on lawful basis for traffic stops. He had violated policy on lawful exit commands. He had violated data policy by running a civilian's plates without cause on multiple occasions. And he had demonstrated a pattern of conduct inconsistent with the standards of the department. Termination was recommended. Tucker resigned before it could be formally processed. His 9-year career ended because of an 11-minute encounter with a woman he had completely underestimated. When the footage was released under a public records request, the internet responded with the kind of force that only comes when a video captures something millions of people recognize from their own lives. The clip hit 47 million views. Civil rights attorneys broke it down frame by frame. Deja's 11-page complaint was shared across Reddit and read by hundreds of thousands of people who called it the most precise citizen complaint they had ever seen. Legal scholars praised her knowledge. Community advocates cited the case as a model for what documented accountability could look like. After the footage went viral, 4 other individuals came forward with accounts of being stopped by Tucker under circumstances they had considered suspicious but never formally reported. This was not an isolated bad night. This was a pattern that had been running for years, invisible, because most people do not document, most people do not file formal complaints, and most people do not have the preparation or the connections to make their complaints impossible to ignore. And that raises the question that lives underneath this entire story. How many others are out there right now? How many stops happen every single night to people who do not have a dashcam, who do not have a legal notebook in their glove compartment, who are too exhausted and too afraid to push back? That question does not have a comfortable answer. Here is a question for you right now. If you were in Deja's position that night, would you have handled it the same way? Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know. After the case became public, the Beaumont Police Department announced 3 formal policy changes. Officers would complete refresher training on the legal standards for traffic stops. The department would implement oversight of plate running activity to prevent pattern targeting of civilians. And a new early warning system would flag officers whose stop patterns showed statistical outliers consistent with profiling. Were these changes enough? Many advocates said they were the bare minimum dressed up as accountability. But the changes happened, and they happened because one woman refused to be afraid. Now, let us talk about Marcus Washington for a moment, because his role in this story goes beyond one phone call. Marcus had enlisted at 18. By 26, he had completed Army Special Forces selection and been assigned to a unit whose operations remain largely classified. Over 22 years of service, he completed deployments in Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, and 2 additional locations that are not publicly confirmed. He was awarded the Silver Star. He was awarded the Bronze Star, with valor twice. He was the kind of soldier that other soldiers quietly pointed to when they talked about what the job could look like at its highest level. And through every deployment, every year overseas, every classified mission, he called his little sister every Sunday without fail. He sent her money when her divorce left her stretched thin. He flew home on leave to sit with her kids at their school play when she had to work a double shift. Marcus Washington was not just a military legend, he was a big brother. And when someone made Deja pull over on the side of that highway, she reached the part of him that no rank, no training, and no deployment had ever touched. She reached the 18-year-old who had promised their mother he would always protect her. So what is the actual lesson from all of this? What should you take away from Deja Washington's story? First, documentation is everything. Dash cams, timestamps, written notes, every detail you record becomes armor. The moment something is documented, it becomes much harder to deny. Second, knowing your rights is not aggression. Asking for the legal basis of a stop and declining to exit a vehicle without lawful cause are not acts of hostility. They are acts of citizenship. Third, the complaint process can work when used precisely. Deja's 11-page complaint triggered a 22-day investigation that ended a 9-year career. The system is imperfect, but a thorough and legally precise complaint is not useless. Fourth, community connections are a form of protection. Knowing who to call, knowing a lawyer, knowing a journalist, building those networks before you need them is something every community should be actively doing. Fifth, accountability requires evidence. The reason this story ended the way it did is because camera footage existed that could not be argued away. In a world where your word against a badge often goes only one direction, recording technology has become one of the most important civil rights tools available to ordinary people. Final question for you tonight. What is one thing you are taking away from this story? Drop it in the comments below. And if this moved you, please share this video because somebody in your circle needs to see it tonight. This story matters because it is not just about Deja Washington and Officer Tucker on a dark highway in Beaumont, Texas. It is about every person who has been pulled over and had to silently calculate how much to push back and how much to swallow. It is about every single mother driving home from a double shift, praying that tonight is not the night something goes wrong. It is about every community that has been told their complaints do not matter and has been proven wrong by one meticulously documented filing. Deja Washington's story shows that you can know your rights and use them calmly and completely. You can document the truth and make it undeniable. You can face something designed to make you feel small and walk away from it with your dignity completely intact. Not every story ends this way. Not every complaint triggers a real investigation. Not every video goes viral. But this one did, and that matters. That is Deja Washington's legacy. Not just the resignation of one officer, not just 47 million views, but the proof, on camera, time-stamped, and undeniable, that one prepared, determined, and quietly courageous woman on the side of a Texas highway was more powerful than everything lined up against her that night. This is the story of how cops harassed a black single mom until she called her brother, the most feared Delta Force commander. But more than that, it is a story about what ordinary people can do when they absolutely refuse to be ordinary victims. Subscribe, share this video, and I will see you in the next one.